Immediately after the Battle of St Albans, Warwick receives his first important military command. He's made captain of the key English garrison at Calais. He replaced the Duke of Somerset, so this was part of this feud between York and Somerset, and York's appointment of Warwick to the captaincy of Calais in 1455 is one of the most crucial reasons why the Yorkists emerge victorious. Calais was one of the most important centres of the English realm in the late Middle Ages. There are two reasons for this. First, it was the home of the only permanent standing military force in England. The Calais garrison, a force of some 800 men, consisted of professional soldiers, people who had experience of the wars in France and who could lend a certain degree of expertise to English armies generally. Calais was well stocked with ordnance, guns, and weaponry, so the control of Calais was absolutely vital. Calais was also important because of its commercial importance. All the English wool that was exported from England to the Low Countries was exported through Calais. The Calais staple, as it was known, was then the absolute centre of England's commercial wealth. And whoever controlled Calais had access to the funds that the merchants of the staple could lend. The support that the Yorkist lords received from Calais and from the merchants there was indicative of a wider regionalism that played an important role in the events of 1459 to 61. The loans made by the Calais staplers between 1459 and 1461 played an important role in guaranteeing Yorkist success. We don't know exactly how much money the wool merchants lent to the Earl of Warwick, the Duke of York and Edward Earl of March between 1459 and 61, but the grants and favours that Edward made to the merchants once he had become king suggest that they played a very important role. Whatever the monetary value of these loans, it's clear that the wealth that the merchants enjoyed was denied to the Lancastrians. This support that the Yorkist lords enjoyed from the merchants extended beyond Calais to include London and the whole of the southeast. The Yorkist lords were very popular in the south of England. Warwick was popular for his exploits in Calais as capturing Spanish and French ships. He was very popular in the Cinque Ports in Kent, for example. And the Yorkist lords, when they landed in 1460, of course landed at Sandwich in Kent. The support that York enjoyed in the south of England is in stark contrast to the hatred of the Lancastrians and their northern army that was apparent in 1461. Whether the Lancastrians were northerners is a moot point, but they were certainly regarded as such. And in the support of London and South East, the Yorkists enjoyed the centre of government and the centre of England's commercial wealth. This gave them a great advantage over the Lancastrians in the events of 1460 and 1461. It's too easy, I think, though, to make the distinction between the southern Yorkists on the one hand and the northern Lancastrians on the other. The Nevilles, of course, as we've seen, were one of the principal magnate families in the north of England, and one of the reasons why the Yorkists enjoyed their success in 1461 is that they had key supporters throughout the realm, not just in the south of England. This is clear even in the northernmost counties. In Northumberland and Yorkshire, for example, they could count on the support of great landowners like Sir William Ure, or more importantly, Sir Robert Ogle. Ogle is a good example of the kind of key men who, at the vital stage of events in 1460, made the decision to support the Yorkists. Ogle had been a servant of both the Earls of Northumberland, who were Lancastrians, and the Neville Earl of Salisbury, who was a Yorkist. He had fought with great distinction against the Scots and was one of the principal landowners in Durham and Northumberland. His support for York was absolutely crucial, and Ogle plays a very vital role in pacifying the northern counties between 1461 and 1464. The measure of his importance, I suppose, is the fact that he's rewarded in 1461 with an elevation to the peerage and becomes Robert Lord Ogle. The placement of key people throughout the realm is a feature of the Yorkist support. So in the Midlands we have Sir William Hastings, on the Welsh marches Sir Walter Devereux, in the southwest men like Sir John Dinham and Sir Humphrey Stafford. These men were incredibly dynamic, and they had to be. Once Richard Duke of York had laid claim to the throne, there was no going back. If you supported York, you had to win. The stakes, if you like, were much higher for those people who had nailed their colours to the Yorkist mast. And I think this gave them a greater dynamism, a greater energy, which was crucial in those vital months. The dynamism and popularity of the Yorkist leaders, I think, stands in stark contrast to the characters of the Lancastrian leaders. If we look at the Lancastrian leaders, they are almost universally unpopular. Margaret of Anjou, of course, is the best example. Margaret's disadvantages were obvious. On the one hand, she was a woman, and on the other hand, she was French. Hardly the qualities to endear her to the English political nation. The other leaders of the Lancastrian party, the Beauforts, were equally unpopular. They were associated with the defeat in France. They were the illegitimate children of, or rather descended from the illegitimate union of John of Gaunt and Catherine Swynford. They didn't have the legitimacy, they didn't have the claims to be the king's natural counsellors that the Yorkist lords, descended, particularly York himself, descended from the sons of Edward III, had. The final reason, I think, why the Yorkists won the throne in 1461 is the personality of Henry VI himself. I very much stress the importance of agency and personality because I think, to me, that is the difference between the houses of Lancaster and York. Henry VI was undoubtedly one of the less able kings that have ever ruled England. When he became an adult in the mid-1430s, it was painfully obvious that he wasn't cut out for the rigours of medieval kingship. Those key virtues of the warrior, the lawgiver, they were absent from Henry. His lack of interest in the French war particularly, I think, compromised his kingship to a fatal level. Coupled with his mental instability and the fact that from 1453 he falls into these periodic bouts of stupor, I think they are enough really to undermine his kingship and mean that his fall is in some ways inevitable. I've stressed the talents and the abilities of both York and his son, the Earl of March, later Edward IV, and the Earl of Warwick. They in themselves would not have been enough, and it's the deficiencies of Henry VI which are equally important. But it's the combination of the two. It's the combination of a long period of ineffective kingship with a short period of dynamism and ambition, which gave the English political nation, if you like, a new hope in 1461. The success of Edward in 1461 is really down to the willingness of the political nation to, if not actively to support him, then at least acquiesce in his usurpation.